Yes, go ahead.
Okay, um, let's start with this panel with only half an hour delay. Um, so, first of all, AC had the idea for this panel and gave it that name. I have nothing to do with why it's called IC2 Mystery Panel. It's still a mystery to me. But yeah. Do you guys remember the good old days of modded Minecraft, when you still had to put mods into the minecraft.jar file and delete the meta in the folder? Remember when the only real mod packs out there were Technic Pack and Techit? Remember when Forge and NEI or JEI didn't exist yet? I went through some really old mod lists, and the only two big mods that are still alive in current Minecraft versions are Industrial Craft and Buildcraft. It just so happens to be that I'm one of the developers of one of these two mods, so let's go into the detail of that. Maintaining a mod with such a large history is hard, since on one side you have the history and the people who know the mod, and on the other side you have the new things like adapting to changes, making progress, and getting in the new players. Most times doing all three of them isn't possible. In IC2 we tried to do that, keeping the tradition and the concept of industrial craft alive, while still making progress by adding new machines and variants of machines and reworking old machines. For example, there are fluid reactors, advanced ore processing machines, and we worked on things like the UU system. If you want to see some examples, you can visit the IC2 booth on the first floor of the booth building. During this panel, I want to show you two of these things that changed. The first one being something else we worked on in the last couple of months, but let me start at the beginning of the history. When we started the experimental stage of IC2, quite a lot was planned to change. One thing planned to change was the IC2 energy net. While we started reworking it, we disabled machine explosions that normally occur due to improper voltage and some other things to not accidentally blow up people's machines due to a bug. While if you followed IC2 development, you probably know that the temporary solution we did wasn't really temporary anymore. I have a good, I remember something from earlier. It's a link. I'll post it on IRC and in Minecraft. You might want to look at that. And after a lot of joking about the IC2 energy net, about IC2 like moving to RF and so on the 1st of April, and getting a lot of input from the entire community, we thought about it and figured that we needed to do something about it. So, in other words, the IC2 energy net is back as it used to be with everything it used to have. Just in case you aren't familiar with IC2, let me give you some examples. Down there, we have a medium voltage energy line. No, it's a high voltage energy line. And most machines don't accept high voltage. So if I place a macerator there, it goes kaboom. But yeah, that's one of the things with the IC2 energy net. You need to be careful with what you do, because not all machines can use all of the power. So if you want to prevent explosions from happening, you either need to down-transform this wire here, or the energy from this wire, or what you can do alternatively is add transformer upgrades to your machines, and therefore upgrade them and not make them explode. Another feature of the IC2 energy net is that it has energy loss. So the further you transport your energy, the more energy you will lose. If you use cables like this, like the glass fiber cables, it isn't that bad. But if you, for example, use high voltage cables, Let me quickly get some. You will lose a lot of energy because they are made out of iron, and in real life, iron doesn't conduct energy very well. While they are capable of transporting higher tier energy, they won't do that very well and will lose a lot of energy. Yeah. Another thing is shocking. Like when I use uninsulated cables, they won't do that. They won't conduct, well, they will conduct energy, but as soon as someone gets close to them, you will get shocked. Yeah. Is anyone willing to try out how much it hurts getting close to your cables like that?
I'm up for it.
Well,
it's very effective. Yeah.
There you see. Of course, it doesn't go through armor, but yeah, it's not supposed to. Are there any more questions to the energy network in IC2? Like, if you have questions, now's the time to ask, like, regarding the energy net. Okay, doesn't look like it. Well, yeah. Huh?
Turret had one in the chat.
Oh yeah, AMP system. That's planned in the long run, but I think player can tell you more about that.
Yeah, it's quite tricky. We had some technical difficulties and scaling problems, so you're more or less back to multiples of one and packet quantities.
And yeah, regarding packets, currently packets are a thing again. You can send multiple packets of energy through one line of cable. We're also using that here on the panel, like the glass fiber cable here. When I put a machine here that consumes energy, there will be lots of packets of energy going through. This is just to speed up things here. Like in a normal playthrough, you wouldn't have like 40 MFSUs powering one line of energy.
Also, energy loss is in doubles, energy storage is in doubles, so you always get some loss. You can't get rid of it anymore.
Yeah. Okay, then let's go to the next part of the thing. The UU system. As you might have known, the IC2 UU matter system changed quite a lot from having pink UU items, like these things here. Yeah, they don't exist anymore, as you can see. Now UU matter is a liquid. You still get the liquid as you did previously from the mass fabricator right here, and currently we're using scrap to speed up that process. Like that still works. But the way it works now is to get items from UU matter, you first need to scan them in a scanner, which is what's done here in this machine. And then you can put the item on a memory card, but the item gets lost. And when you have enough UU matter, you can replicate the item again in this machine, in the replicator, to get the items back from UU matter. And you can get more items from UU matter than just one. Like the crystal memory doesn't destroy the item once you replicated it. So you can duplicate any items you want if you just have enough energy and UU matter. Of course, it's quite expensive and for the late game, but it's not meant to be early game. It's meant as an achievement for when you're done in the late game of IC2. You can also replicate non-basic materials like fences, doors, machines, whatever, because it's similar to EMC and equivalent exchange. The UU matter values get generated dynamically from the crafting recipes that are present and from the amount of ore that is generated in the world. So the more iron ore that spawns in your world, the more the less value iron ore will have, and therefore it will cost less UU matter. That is also a notable change. Just that you get a reference, cobblestone currently has a UU matter value of 10 micro buckets. Like when you want to replicate one piece of cobblestone, you need to pay 10 micro buckets of UU matter. Of course, you most likely don't want to replicate cobblestone, but yeah, during the world generation, it's calculated as how much cobblestone is generated and how much other things are generated, and the less cobblestone you have, the more other things will be worth. Now, 1 millibucket will yield you 100 blocks of cobble, not 1,000. Since one cobblestone requires 10 microbuckets. I'm sorry if I said that wrong before. Are there any questions left regarding the UU matter system?
So Putis had a question regarding why we chose a liquid instead of a solid. And our main reason is for this liquid system you get a resolution of 1 millibucket. We extended it by some factors internally, but you can be much more granular with your UU matter usage.
Liquids are also easier to balance because you can have part of a liquid, but you can't have half an item or so. That doesn't work. Yeah, why does solid UU matter still exist? That's a good question. Player, do you want to answer that?
We may want to bring it back in some form or shape, maybe like before, maybe some else, some different style, but it's not completely gone.
Yeah, soon TM.
And regarding Wolf's question, we just scan newly generated chunks in dimension 0, which is quite limited, especially when you're talking about renewable resources or wood and mob drops and different items. You can multiply normally, are very expensive using UU matter. And we don't cover liquids either.
Yeah. Okay, if there are no questions left regarding the UU matter system, I'd say we finish off with a general Q&A. But that was the panel for now. So thank you for attending. Yeah.
And yes, UU is a normal liquid. It has some special effects if you enter its block space, but it flows normally, it can be placed normally.
Mm-hmm.
And it currently tends to make things very foggy.
We don't need capabilities regarding 3 tasks question. We have a detached system using events. You can use any object with IC2's energy API. It doesn't have to be an in-world tile entity, and as such you can be fully flexible anyway.
Regarding the multi-block structures, we currently have different systems. Like we also have a heat system and a kinetic energy system in IC2 now, and machines won't get multi-blocks, at least not really multi-block like, but as in you have different kind of systems. Like when you have a windmill, you get kinetic energy, and you need to convert that kinetic energy into electricity, and that's already a multi-block since it requires multiple blocks to get something done. If you have played with fluid reactors, you also get like fluid from the reactor. You need to turn that into steam. You need to turn the steam into kinetic energy, and you need to turn the kinetic energy into normal energy. And yeah, these are all different steps done by different machines, so it's not really a multi-block, but it's multiple blocks working together as one machine. Yeah. But
what are your thoughts on Spargear's IC2 Classic?
let's not talk about it.
Fair enough.
But yeah, regarding the multi-blocks again, IC2 was one of the first mods that had multi-blocks. Like the reactor is multi-block. I don't think even Railcraft with the coke oven was there before.
So another technical question, will Universal Cells support forge capabilities? We do support interacting with tanks and other capability objects, but we don't implement capabilities on our own items yet. And it's quite low priority, to be honest. Our HD textures, it's questionable how high definition our textures are. Our theme is to provide textures that look more or less like 16x with added details. It's just a design choice we made a couple of years ago. It may change, it may stay, we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And my eNet bridge mod should still work mostly, it just needs porting to newer RF API versions. IC2's API is more or less unchanged still.
Yeah. Use liquid UU matter to turn into solid UU matter. That all depends on how the solid UU matter system will end up. Like we haven't quite decided yet how the solid UU matter system will be done, or what it should do, or things like that. So we don't know yet. But if it fits, there will be a conversion. If it doesn't, there won't. Um, yeah, the IC2 API hasn't changed that much since versions. Mainly the change chunk code in pair to block pause and things like that. But outside of the Minecraft changes, not much has happened.
Spectacular question. Do death cables zap mobs in a mob farm if they do harm any entity? So
Yeah.
they should work perfectly.
You can use uninsulated cables for a mob farm. I did that once. You just have to make sure that there's energy flowing through the cable constantly, because if there's no energy flowing through the cable, like if the machine doesn't request any energy, there's no energy flowing through the cable, and therefore there's no damage to be applied.
Wouldn't Tesla coils be better then?
Well, Tesla coils are specifically meant to do that, and they do that very well, but they consume the entire energy, while uninsulated cables still let the energy flow through the cable, and you just have a you just waste a bit of energy to do something that's just not what it's meant for. But you can use both.
Question is whether you can use two batteries and just send energy back and forth. You can do it for a little while, but for once you have conduction loss, and once an entity gets zapped, you lose quite some energy.
Mm-hmm.
You could do that, but have a generator on it, basically.
Yeah, that would work. Well, no, because if you have a generator on them, then one bat box will get full, and then it stops sending energy, and then you're at the same situation that no energy is conducted.
Or you could do a loop, of course.
Yeah. I'm sure there's some way to do that.
Regarding our armor, if we should buff it or not, I think it's really quite strong. If you want to have something stronger, you have to go into really overpowered territory. I don't know if that fits unless we add some more hostile enemies to counterbalance it.
In my opinion, I think it's since we did the liquid UU matter system, the quantum armor got quite a lot more expensive. I think there might be something to do to balance it better again. Yeah.
I don't know, maybe.
Tesla coils multi-blocks. That's an interesting idea. I just don't know how it would work or how well it would work. But the idea is interesting. What is a dank
maybe
coil?
8 to 60 hours a week on IC2.
How much time we spend? That's a really good question. I spend most of my free time making Minecraft mods because of different reasons. Mainly because it's fun and I like what I'm doing. But how much time we spent, that's really hard to say, because it's not the same all the time. And yeah, when I need to learn for exams, for example, I don't have the time to make mods, to develop mods. But IC2 is a relatively big mod, requiring a lot of time to keep up. Like we started updating IC2 to Minecraft 1.8 in December and released it on the 2nd of April. That could roughly give you an idea on how much time it requires. My opinion on immersive engineering. I haven't played with immersive engineering that much yet. Like I haven't played Minecraft in general in a while. But I'm not sure what to think about immersive engineering. Let's just put it that way. I haven't spent enough time with it yet.
Yeah, I think it's pretty, it's functional, but quite on the overpowered side and maybe not as revolutionary as it appears. But it's a decent mod.
Why is IC2 experimental called IC2 experimental and not IC3? That's a good question.
Because it's IC2.
Yeah, that's it. An option to use uranium early game. A reactor isn't too hard to set up. Like, you can set up a reactor within 1 hour of playtime.
If you find a lot of lead.
Yeah. It's not too hard to do it. It won't be a 512 EU per tick reactor, but it will be nearly free energy. Yeah. Regarding heavy water, we have heavy water. I didn't even know.
Epic saying we are only shocking entities. Blocks won't be affected yet, maybe at some point, but it's unlikely. And regarding converting EU to RF, I think that's quite fair and not very problematic. You can find it in forestry using its engine at 2.5 to 3 for MJ. For RF it's times 4, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, EU to RF is generally unproblematic. The other way around varies extremely depending on what other mods you have installed. As soon as you have big reactors installed, the other way, there's no way to balance the RF to EU conversion, because big reactors just ruins that balance. Yeah, a floating conversion ratio between EU and RF would be the only reasonable thing to do.
So for a nuke demo?
Huh?
As you can tell, it doesn't do anything because it needs fuel and, well, also we disabled it.
How I went about joining the IC2 team, that's an interesting question. I liked playing IC2 earlier because it was the first real tech mod I used, and it was the mod I liked most. And one day on a server I was generating energy, and I was sad that the only real way to produce EU was high voltage solar panels. And I thought, I'm gonna do something about that. And I made a mod that added high voltage windmills. It was quite unbalanced because windmills are easier to get than solar panels, and I used a different algorithm to calculate the amount of energy to output. So I added rotors, and then after a while, Thunderdark PM'd me on the IC2 forums if they can use my rotor code in IC2, and that's eventually how I ended up in the IC2 team.
Alexa, you mean nuke fuel, or what do you mean? For nukes, you can use any radioactive material in its core, and around it industrial TNT. And depending on what you use in the inside, you get varying amounts of explosion energy and radiation. And you need a certain threshold to get an explosion at all.
Regarding the upcoming official modding API, I don't think it will happen within the next couple of years. And I didn't think about further yet. Yeah. And no, IC2 is not open source.
Nukes are disabled. It wouldn't make a difference if we put fuel in it or not. Yeah, IC2 is not obfuscated. You can look at it using a bytecode viewer or whatever you like, but we don't publish our source code. Vexatus, if you have a use case for our core API classes, just ask and we will see about adding them to our official API.
Mm-hmm.
And regarding open source IC2, it is very unlikely to happen. It has never been open source. We don't really have the licensing required, and I don't really see a strong need to open source it either.
There were also so many contributors to IC2 that it would be hard to get a hold of all of them and make them agree or ask them if they agree to the license change. And yeah, it would be quite a hassle. If IC2 is inspired by GregTech, Greg was in the IC2 team before. I think he still has source access, but he doesn't do anything anymore.
It was not Greg's idea to change IC2 experimental as it changed. We certainly took some inspiration, but it's not up to him. And overall, our goal was to be a bit more friendly towards long-term server play than before. And if you look closely, you will see that smelting iron was replaced by hammering iron, so it's not too bad. Oh, he's busy. Alblaka is busy elsewhere.
On a scale from IC2 to Flamingo, how cool is GregTech 6? I would say 12-teen.
Yeah, GregTech is great. If you like it, play it. Regarding our idea behind Industrial Craft, it's a bit of an utility mod if you look closely enough. We added, with adding energy and enhancing processing, you more or less get to what it is now. It just developed by itself, more or less. I think IC2 was the first, but I'm not exactly sure. We are much older than many other mods.
Do you think adding more steps or microcrafting to your recipes was a good or bad decision? Personally, for me, I don't particularly like that idea. But then again, yeah, I made a little add-on that counter balances that, like removing the extra steps yet. But yeah, originally it was thought that that there will be less recipe conflicts, because if all mods use like a circle of iron in the crafting grid, like there's no way to determine if a machine case from IC2 should be crafted or a whatever from that other mod. So it was necessary to do something about it. If it was the correct choice or not is debatable.
Yeah, for microcrafting, we have some ideas regarding adding some helping tools like a workbench that can automate some crafting steps, or auto-crafting machinery and piping, but it's in a very distant future. And our player base is, as far as I'm concerned, alright. It doesn't have to be extremely huge, so we don't mind. If you want to play long term, you probably are better using IC2 than a mod that gets you to endgame in a few hours.
Yeah. Well, what do you mean with when do we get a language update for IC2 experimental 110 and future versions? Like, during the 1.7 to 1.8 update, a lot of things have changed, including the localization. But the localization was always done by the community, and as soon as the community updates the language files again, they will be in again. That's how simple it is.
We have to pull it in.
Yeah.
IC2 isn't very experimental anymore. And to be honest, our experimental version is a lot more stable than 90% of any other mods.
I know there's now an electric sorter in IC2, but what about item transport? You want to say something about that, player?
Well, I just hinted it already a bit regarding Buildcraft being very slow to update, and we probably wanting to add our own piping system. You will see something sooner or later. Maybe a bit different, but not your instant teleporting style.
Mm-hmm. Will IC2 ever be out of the experimental state? Once we get IC3 ready, yes.
Or IC2 gets back to non-experimental.
Well, whatever comes first.
We skip to IC10.
That's an alternative as well. Almost every IC2 dev is German, and yet here I am, the only German IC2 translator, says Vexatus. Not the entire IC2 dev team. Like, only 2/3.
More like 5/6.
Depends on who you count as active.
Yeah, okay.
What do you think about GregTech's item transport pipes? I've never played with GregTech. I don't know.
Don't know.
Would you like to schedule your free update to IC10? Well, didn't you see the pop-up message that popped up every time since 1.8? Like, in the chat, it says download IC10 now. Like, didn't you notice? How could you not notice that?
No, isn't it in our debug output in fml client latest.txt?
I'm sure someone will check now.
Did we miss any questions?
If we missed any questions, post them again, now.
What happens to the union matter calculation if you add IC2 to a pre-existing world?
ME calculation always uses a fresh separate world, or a more or less separate world. It is independent of what you built before. You have to execute it manually, though. It never calculates on its own, and it takes several minutes to do so, blocking all server resources.
So not like Mistcraft.
No, we have a more conservative approach.
Okay, I think we're done then. Yeah. Thanks everyone for attending, and see ya at the next Better Than Minecon.
One more question. Wrench logging has been in IC2 for years, in 1.2 maybe, or earlier. I'm not sure what you would call our most interesting mechanic. Fluid reactors using Buildcraft piping has been really fun recently. You get some glitchy behavior and it becomes a little bit unstable, so it's more exciting.
Most fun block to develop. The most fun block that I developed for IC2 was the chunk loader. But then again, I haven't really developed that many blocks for IC2. Maybe 2 or 3.
Our most difficult block, more or less, is our replicator using UU's backend. We had the first implementation really doing recipe resolving in such an extent. I'm not sure what is very controversial. We skip ideas very quickly.
Mm.
So, anyone else? So, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The terraformer. The terraformer. Well, I thought about doing something yet. I'm not sure if it'll end up in IC2 or in an add-on, because in IC2 we make sure that things are balanced, while when you just make an add-on, just it doesn't matter, since people can just remove it if they want to. I might do something with Terraformer soon. As I said, I'm just not sure where it'll end up. Okay. I think that's it then.
Yeah, I guess so.